Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the Holly Lolly channel. I know that many of you want to come to Japan, but here is some deterrent that prevents you from doing so. What might that be? Well, of course, it's the financial side of things. Everyone thinks that to come to Japan is just insanely expensive, that everyone will leave almost all their savings here, because Japan is far away, expensive and many other things. Today, I want to share with you exactly tips for budget travel in Japan. Of course, first of all, you need to get to the land of the rising sun. For this I have simple tips. For example, you need to buy tickets very well in advance, look, explore. And, of course, you can save a lot of money if you are ready to change planes, because a direct flight will, of course, last 12 to 13, sometimes even 14 hours. But if there are connecting flights, the more connections, the more you can save. Of course, traveling alone or with two people, I think to save a decent amount of money, you can make such a sacrifice. But if you are traveling with your family, there is only one way out: look for tickets in advance, 6 months, a year in advance, and buy in advance. Well, basically, the way the Japanese do it. The Japanese know a year in advance where they will vacation, where they will go. They plan everything in advance. If you look at the data for the 23rd year, you can find out that more than 22 million tourists came to Japan. And, of course, Japan is now open to tourists, and different options have been thought out so that people with any budget, even with a very limited one, can rent affordable accommodation. There are many places where you can eat very inexpensive and delicious meals, and there are also many free or affordable entertainment options. The first thing we'll talk about is the hotel and its selection. And of course, I won't surprise you if I say that you should also look for a hotel and book it in advance, because the best options are sold out quickly and well in advance. If you think that next week I will decide to fly to Japan, then, of course, you will look for a long time to find something decent for cheap. When looking for a place to stay in Tokyo, I suggest you look at some of the most inexpensive and budget-friendly neighborhoods. That's Ueno and Asakusa. And to give you some guidance, the most expensive neighborhoods to live in are Shinjuku, Shibuya, and also Ginza. So if your budget allows you to live in these neighborhoods, that's great. If not, I would advise you to just look at Ueno and Asakusa. The most budget-friendly accommodation options for your stay are, of course, hostels and capsule hotels. Hostels are straight up the most budget-friendly option. Of course, we know that it is not very comfortable, but it is very cheap, because you can spend the night, take a shower, if you need to cook something, and go in search of adventure in the capital of Japan. Next up are capsule hotels. A capsule hotel is convenient and inconvenient at the same time. Why? On the one hand, it's such a meter by 2 meters bed that closes. This is a plus, but you can at least somehow behind a kind of screen privacy and sleep. But, of course, this is only if you are traveling alone. In capsule hotels usually stay businessmen who missed the last train, or those people who really just want to pass the night and go on. If you are coming for a week, then, of course, a capsule hotel will not be quite convenient. The price for renting this capsule varies from 2,000 yen to 5,000 yen. That's about $15 to $40. What I definitely recommend from the budget ones are the business hotels. They come next in price policy after capsule hotels. They are a bit more expensive, but they have everything you need for life. Business hotels differ in the fact that there are very small rooms, but 2 people can safely stay there. And if more than 2 people, then it is already necessary to rent several rooms, or still look for something bigger. For 2 people it is a great option to stay. There is not much space, but everything is small, but all its own for a short period of time. The best sites for finding hotels are Booking and Rakuten Travel. As for Airbnb, for example, I used it very actively for the first year of my life in Japan. Airbnb is suitable for those people who are traveling as a family, with children, or just with large companies. And the first 2 sites help you find mini rooms to spend the night and go on to continue your journey. If there are even 4 of you, it's honestly hard to find a hotel with that many beds. If, for example, my husband and I and 2 kids, it's either 1 double bed and 2 single beds or 4 single beds. You have no idea how hard that is to find. Because of this, we couldn't rent a long-term place here, so we used the Airbnb site and just rented apartments for a month, then we would move somewhere else for 2 weeks. Also, if you need to rent a hostel, there is also such a site as Hostel World. There you can also find acceptable options for yourself. If you want to feel all this Japanese atmosphere of life, I advise you at least for a day to try housing called ryokan. What is it? This is traditional Japanese accommodation. It is a more expensive segment than business hotels, but you can plunge into this culture and atmosphere. These hotels are special in their culture and tradition. First of all, you will find futons, tatami, and these paper sliding doors. Often in such hotels there are onsen. These are hot springs, where you can just feel what you are going to Japan for. So, such one-time visits are very interesting. You will be enveloped by this hospitality. One of the main features of the ryukins are the traditional kensuki dinners. In traditional kensuki lunches, the food is served in a certain sequence and prepared with seasonal produce in small portions, but there are a lot of them. You will be brought out, and the food just won't run out. We went on such a tour once and decided to experience for ourselves what it was like. And it's the kind of food that we, living here in Tokyo, haven't even seen. Every ingredient surprises you. You don't know what you're tasting. You're discovering some new palette of flavors. Your receptors are just going crazy with what they're tasting. So it's amazing, really. I don't know. I wouldn't stay there for a week, but if you have the opportunity to stop for a day or two to get a feel for the atmosphere, I'd encourage you to do so. I was thinking, I should probably add why these hotels might not be suitable for everyone. If you like to sleep on the floor, then sure, that's cool, but my back is so sensitive that it's very uncomfortable for me. I know it's good for your back to sleep on a futon, but for me it's horrible. Also, tatami tends to give off this peculiar odor, like you're in a hayloft somewhere. And the futon itself, it's also very hard. If you come in the cold season, there is a feeling of dampness, a little bit of coolness on the floor. And we pulled a blanket over ourselves, because there was a little discomfort from the cold, from not being used to sleeping on a futon. I made 2 futons, because one was too little for me. I could feel everything under me, so it is really interesting for a change. But to spend the whole vacation in this hotel, I would not. Well, of course, I couldn't help but hit the topic. If you are traveling, for example, with a loved one, you can stay in a love hotel. Well, I think the name speaks for itself, for what such hotels are designed, that is, they are hotels for 2 people only. From the pluses, it is a large room, a large bed, also very often there is a jacuzzi, plasma, and very straight, unusual bright interiors. As for transportation, Japan is very convenient to travel using Shinkansen trains, high-speed trains. And, of course, it is worth mentioning here that if you buy Japan Rail Pass, such travel cards, you will save significantly. For 7 days such a card will cost 300 euros, for 14 days 480 euros. This allows you to travel between cities on this pass, because traveling on a Shinkansen is very much not a cheap pleasure. And so, as you buy this pass, you can travel from point A to point B back as many times as you want. And really, if you are supposed to have a rich program, rich routes, a lot of movement, then I think it is very beneficial. If, of course, you have planned Tokyo, then some other city and come back, then, of course, it is not worth it. As for the subway fare, the subway here is insanely comfortable, clean, cozy, and in general now I will name a lot of pluses. But the price is biting, because the subway fare is not cheap. I am not talking about cabs at all. Cabs here are insanely expensive. A lot of people, I know, rent bikes and move around on bikes as well. Honestly, I don't rent bikes, I take the subway. But if I go, for example, to Europe, I can move by cab, but in Japan it's better not to. The subway here is insanely comfortable. It's better to travel on the subway. It will be cheaper. What's the difference between the subway and buses? For example, price. The subway will count the number of stations you've traveled. I have a Pasmo card. I put it to the turnstile when I enter and then when I leave, and I am charged the amount of money according to the number of stations I have traveled. If I use the bus, for example, it's basically a flat rate of 200 yen on the bus, whether you travel one station or you're there from Route A to Route B. So buses are not off the list either. You can use them too. Also cheaper than trains can be buses Viller Express. But if you want to save a lot of money, I advise you to use night buses. They can be on average 50% cheaper. If you are traveling at night, you do not need to look for a place to sleep. The night will not be as comfortable, because I realize that sleeping on a bus is not sleeping on a bed. But you will firstly save on the ticket, and secondly, you will save that day exactly on accommodation that you do not need a hotel. So where are we on the food, you ask? About the food. First of all, I advise you to eat in company. Here's the truth. I know you've seen a lot of TikToks, like paid their own amount of money on a flight to eat onigiri there for $1. Yes indeed, the onigiri is just insanely delicious, pre-made meal kits, lunches, snacks. This is my 3rd year living here, and I don't have enough of that time to try. I don't know half of what's available. Every time I find some new thing that I haven't tried, and these new things, they don't end, because I don't have enough time in my life to try them all. So for sure you go to Japan to try new things, so I recommend combini with ready-made inexpensive food. As far as those kind of, fast food places, my number 1 recommendation is Matsuya. I love Matsuya. It's really cheap there, and it's really good. Of course, it's not the kind of food that you can brag about, admire, take Instagram pictures of, but you can eat quickly, cheaply, and deliciously. They are not distinguished by any special appearance, but they differ in price and flavor, so I recommend it. There's also sukiya. I don't know, it's on a lover, to be honest. I think there's only one dish in the sukiya that I like, the rest are specific flavors, but it's a matter of taste. I also recommend the cocoa curry, also very tasty if you like curry. This is the Japanese fast food that everyone talks about. There's a lot of healthy stuff in here. They give you miso soup, you order a main course. Conditionally, it's rice and meat. There's also a salad, and you can get free tea. It's delicious, healthy, inexpensive. There's also a place called Yoshinoya. It's also delicious, inexpensive. You know, when it comes to food, I don't advise you to eat in touristy places. I started my Japan to Go program about a year ago, where I periodically go to some subway stations and show you what is available at one particular station, the whole range. There I went to different places, which are designed for tourists, because there is just an insanely bright, cool picture, the appearance, the interior is cool. They work on serving to present you a very beautiful dish. But these dishes are not always super tasty. I've had much tastier food than I've had there. If at least 1-2 stations away from the center and just walk along the streets, you will find a lot of local cafes. It's atmospheric there. It's a different atmosphere from ours. Go in, try it, use a translator, translate what's there. If there are pictures, you can point to what you want. I'm saying it's a different level of food. Yes, there will not be some interior, some special serving, but there will be crazy flavor. And it will be cheap, by the way, not like in tourist places. And in tourist places you have to book in advance, because most likely you won't get there if you just come to eat, for example, at lunchtime. In normal life I prefer to eat in non-tourist places, because they are tastier. But you know, again, not for the video, but we went to Kobe and decided to try the famous meat. This is probably the only one of all the places I've been to in Japan that left such a negative impression and residue. I don't know why as soon as we walked in we didn't like the waiters who worked there. We chose the place just by the reviews. It's a fairly popular place, where everyone writes reviews that the meat there is so great, it just melts in your mouth. And we came to try it purely for the sake of this meat. We decided to order 100 grams of this meat, small portions. Maybe because you came to an expensive restaurant and ordered a small portion, we were treated like that. But still it was not very pleasant, because we ordered 5 small portions, and they started to bring them out to us. It included some side dish, soup and something else. But first of all, at first they didn't bring anything out for a long time, and then, as soon as the first soup was brought, the waitress hurried us up. She told us to eat faster. I felt like I was in some kind of, you know, kindergarten canteen, when the cook tells you to eat faster. Well, anyway, I was very surprised. Then they started bringing the things I mentioned earlier, and when she brought out the long-awaited meat, we were already full of something we hadn't even ordered, because it was just part of the set. She brought out the meat and said you have 5 minutes to eat it. After 5 minutes, she asked us to go to the exit because they had other customers. Although when we came here, no one told us that you have limited timings there, and like the dish you came for and left a considerable amount of money there, then you were told you have 5 minutes to eat that dish and please leave. It was as unpleasant as possible. And when the kids and I went to the restroom, they asked us to wait outside because they needed to clean up and we were here disturbing them. So, honestly, it was very unpleasant. For the 100th time I convinced myself that I'd rather go to those places that are not directly hyped, rather than there, where this is so. In principle, in other establishments, everyone is as polite as possible, as cultural as possible, and I hope that this was such, you know, one unpleasant exception to the rule. Just my advice to you: go to cafes not for tourists. Then, of course, everyone will want to bring some souvenirs or buy something for themselves. And here I advised Don Quixote. Don Quixote is a very cool store, your jaw will drop there, but still, the prices there are a bit high. Yes, there is almost everything there, and something inexpensive, something overpriced. Well, go there is definitely worth it. And if you have a very limited budget, and bring something you want, I advise you to store 100 yen, where everything is 100 yen each product, or daiso. Each item there is about 110 yen, it's very cheap, but you can buy a lot of things, just a whole suitcase to fill, so I'm sure each of you will find something to your liking. There's a lot of stuff to choose from, souvenirs and some home accessories. You know, in Tokyo and other big cities there are a lot of places where you can go for free. Entrance to many parks is either free, well, or 500 yen will be for the entrance, that is like some minimal investment, but you just admire the insanely beautiful Japanese nature. All the temples here are free, of course, you should also come and feel the beauty. And, in principle, there are a lot of places where you can just walk the streets to admire, different stations, a lot of museums, which are also free. In general, a lot of places with attractions. And many people ask me, they write in person, whether it is worth going to Disneyland. Honestly, here's my frank opinion that it is not worth it. Tickets are insanely expensive, queues are just a cloud. I know now, especially in the tourist season, people stand for 2 to 3 hours before the opening. Well, if you want to stand in lines all day long to ride there for, I don't know, 30 seconds, then, of course, you can come. But if not, there are other amusement parks here that you can just go to. There's one with a great view of Mount Fuji. There's either the tallest or the fastest slide roller coaster in the world. There's a park in Yokohama. You can do that too. And a lot of other parks with rides that are probably worth a visit. At Disneyland, I only liked it once. It was a period of COVID when there were no tourists, and it was a rainy day. We even put raincoats on ourselves, but it was practically not, and we were really able to ride then, because the other times we came and for a day well more than 3 attractions did not have time to visit. But we were so tired, just fell off our feet, and I every time said that we will never go to Disneyland again. I hope this issue was enjoyable and informative for you. Please put a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in new videos. Bye bye!